was the Wrestling Showcase, and the show now is Talking with Friends on Premier Streaming Network. Hello, everybody. I'm Josh Shernoff, and I am joined, as always, by my friends. First, Fred Shernoff. How are you, Fred?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And right below me on the screen here, the one and only Calvin Tan. Calvin Tan, welcome to Premier Streaming Network.
It's 2023. It's a new year.
Yes, it is. And next to Calvin, below Fred, is the one and only Matt Mangol. Matt Mangol, welcome to Premier.
Salute. Happy New Year, all.
So, we are here to talk all things the Wrestling Showcase. This is a brand new episode, season 2, some might say, of Talking with Friends. If you're wondering what Talking with Friends is, well, go to Premier Streaming Network, which is exactly where you are right now, and check out the entire library of Talking with Friends. The reason we wanted to do this immediately following the Wrestling Showcase is twofold. One, we were the brain trust, for better or worse. So if you didn't like it, blame us. And if you loved it, it's our responsibility. We were behind the Wrestling Showcase, and we'll explain all of that in just a moment and tell you how that event came to be, which is now exclusive to Premier Streaming Network. But also, Talking with Friends, originally the concept behind it was we spent the first, 8 episodes taking you through the journey of the TWF, from Teenage Wrestling Foundation to the Wrestling Federation, and we explained how we ran this wrestling promotion with absolutely no intention to ever promote a wrestling show ever again. Having said that, in the process of a year plus of doing this show, I think that bug kind of came back a little bit, and one thing led to another, and, we did the Wrestling Showcase. So, guys, I'm going to start off, Fred, with you. When do you remember what do you remember the genesis of the Wrestling Showcase being?
Well, I think, like you said, when we were recapping everything about TWF, and we went into great detail about the trials and tribulations and the mistakes that we made. And though it really made a point of how difficult it is and how hard it is to succeed with the promotion, I think we remembered the good aspects of it. And I think we remembered how fun it was to work together toward that goal for all of us. And that's where our friendship really came from. And we're cemented from that. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's something that we touched on in previous episodes, that we had always talked about one more thing, not bringing the TWF back again, but a one night only, maybe an annual tournament, some kind of thing that we'd always wanted to do. So that was always there. Then
Last Man Standing in particular.
Specifically the Last Man
Standing. For those who haven't watched previous episodes, that was an event that we did, a specific unique style tournament that began with tag matches and then went into a random because it's wrestling, a random singles round, and then went to a fatal 4-way in the finals that worked itself into a final. It was a whole thing. It was really cool, and that was, I think, our original kind of spark in our minds. We're like, well, maybe we could bring the Last Man Standing tournament back.
So coming off of that, I think for me, I was at the time, I was doing the cartoons for ad-free shows, and that was my sort of claim to fame in the business, other than this podcast. And I was looking for more opportunities to get involved and to do something different and really, get back into being really a part of it. And we were kicking around a few different ideas and different ways to go. And eventually, one thing led to another, and I ended up talking to Comrade Thompson. And through a series of conversations with him and Jeff Jarrett, it sort of evolved over time, the idea that there was talk about us doing something together, and it wasn't sure. But what it came down to was Comrade basically saying, we're going to have an opportunity in September that I'm running Top Guy Weekend outside of Chicago, and there's going to be a ballroom there. And if you guys want to come and do something, have at it. So, which was very cool of Comrade. And that was really where it began. And and the original idea was very much to do the Last Man Standing tournament. That quickly became a budget nightmare.
Well, when you realize that your first round is made up of tag matches, you've just doubled your budget on for talent.
And I will say, and then I'll head off to everyone else. But I would say that many years ago, when we in between the second and third incarnations of the TWF, and I think we've joked about this on the air before, that we got some pushback about pay from some of the workers coming back for the third version, that it's not 2002, 2003 anymore, brother. And we thought that was very funny at the time. I will tell you that my concept of what wrestlers charged, based on the early 2000s, the numbers didn't match up.
But hold on. But in fairness, we weren't booking Danny DeManto for this show. We were booking Matt Cardona. We were booking, Jacob Fatu. We were booking the best of the best that happened to not be under contract to one of the major promotions. So, yeah, so there is that, because I think, honestly, like a Danny DeManto, I feel like you could probably book for the same amount that you booked him in, you would have booked him in 07.
But my point is that both the time had passed and the scope of what we wanted to do was so much greater for this one show that we weren't realistic about the budget initially, and so that's kind of what put the end to the Last Man Standing tournament from the start, was that if we're going to do this, it's going to be a more traditional kind of King of the Ring inspired tournament. And actually, the King of the Ring was a big inspiration for the design of everything. So on that note, I'll
So one thing that I'll say is, at the time, I was director of programming for a different network, and the idea with this was, okay, well, Fred wants to get involved doing something with Conrad and Jeff, which later ended up kind of doing something adjacent to Conrad and with Jeff, which we'll explain all of that. Jeff Jarrett was a huge part of this. But no, so I looked at it and said, well, as director of programming at this other network, of course, what a great opportunity to bring this in. And we were very, from the beginning there, I knew, I had another job to do, that I was focused on a lot of other things. Specifically, StarCast was coming up. So it really, that's where it kind of was like, all right, we had this idea, but how can we really do this right? Because the TWF, a big downfall was I tried to take way too much on myself, and did not delegate properly, even though I had the three of you always helping with things. So the idea was, okay, let's really do this as a team, because I can do the creative. That's kind of where it ends as far as my time commitment. So I want to jump into with Calvin and Matt, but before I do want to say we were recording an episode of Talking with Friends when I got a text message. Fred and I both, I believe, got a text message from Conrad, who had an idea. And the idea was, there was nothing going on one of the last nights of StarCast, where they had some, like, GCW was running and some other, smaller promotions.
Today, I think he's saying that the ring's just going to be sitting there.
The ring's going to be sitting there. Hey, do you guys want to move to StarCast instead of doing the Top Guy Weekend? We chose not to do that because we wanted the focus to end up to be on the showcase. We didn't want the focus to be.
And we needed the time to do it right. This was, I don't remember.
We would have cut a month. It would have cut a month off.
No.
It was the end of July, and we did. It was ended last weekend of July, and we did the first weekend of September. Yeah. So, but it would have cut 5 weeks off, and that would have just been a terrible idea. But so, Calvin, we'll go to you. What is your memory of how this came to be? Obviously, it sparked off with this idea of Fred being like, hey, I want to get back in the driver's seat of doing something both creatively and from a business standpoint inside the wrestling business. And that led to the conversation with Conrad and Jeff. But Calvin Tan, do you remember when you were first approached to to come on board and be part of the team launching this?
I'm not sure if it was a text message from you guys or a group call or something like that. But I was in once. It's always been my dream to have a wrestling tournament with the winner receiving a belt instead of a trophy that could be carried around with them for the entire year. And I think as soon as I heard that that was the concept of where we wanted to take this, I was 100% in on it.
You were actually responsible. We can talk about the belt for a second. It's a great opportunity to kind of segue to that belt. It's a little out of order, but not too out of order because we got really excited about this belt in the beginning. But Calvin was instrumental in the initial design of the belt championship. Excuse me, championship. A belt holds up your pants. But the idea that we had behind this, a lot of it came from Calvin saying this should be more like a Stanley Cup, with the winner being the 2022-2023, as opposed to just doing the 1 year. And that's where the idea kind of came from that was, what if we have a removable plate, not just a nameplate, but a removable date plate on the belt as well? And then I believe you started mocking things up on one of the 2K games, right?
So let's take this back a little bit. Just from our interactions at the StarCast conventions with the belt makers and just getting to hold some of these ring-worn belts, the legacy behind these belts that I was able to hold and put on my shoulder of guys like Bret Hart, Razor Ramon held, just to have that ring-worn belt meant a lot to me as a wrestling fan. So I really wanted a belt that we could change not only the name but the date on and have it be passed down, and that belt would represent the legacy of a tournament,
Right.
of like the best of the best. So that's kind of like where that idea of the date on the belt changing and having it be the exact same belt every year.
Right. The idea would be it's like 10 years in, and if you're now at a convention and people are holding this belt, they know that this is the championship from 10 years
History
of the Wrestling Showcase, and not just the events, because, and we'll get to that in a minute, what it means to be the Wrestling Showcase champion. That belt is not just, it's not like, oh man, this was that one night on September 3rd in Schaumburg, Illinois. This belt has been around the world already. This has been in other countries. So it appears on various different promotions, which is really cool. It even appeared on a promotion that night. What's that?
Yeah. I said the same thing as you. Yeah.
Yeah. Even that night, as soon as our show was over, Matt Cardona took the championship right over to GCW. Matt Mangol. Then we'll jump back to the belt at some point, but because I love that thing. Matt Mangol, what was your initial exposure to the Wrestling Showcase idea? Do you remember?
I'm not sure exactly how it happened. I believe it was through kind of like on the Messenger stream that we've had going for about 10 years. But we had a meeting on, I guess, Google Meet or one of those things. And you guys, we knew you guys were hatching something, Calvin and I. And then I think, you asked us if we wanted to be part of this thing. And you mentioned the thing about Conrad and everything. And all I know is Jesus Christ. Josh, Joe's not here anymore.
Yeah, Joe's
Josh.
in here. And Jesus Christ is, I'm sure always with us, but
Hey, that's what you got to do. Happy birthday, by the way. Christmas.
Yeah, it's January 5th as we're recording this, but still.
Anyway, what I'm saying is, look, Josh, you bust your ass. You have, literally and figuratively for years. But you work hard. I always am trying to do whatever I can to help out. Fred, you don't get the respect that you deserve. Like 17 books out there, which should be made into some other things, but we'll talk about another time. But doing the hard work with Conrad and everything, I know you were trying to show him what you can do, as well as Jeff and so on. And I just appreciated being able to be offered to be part of it, right? So my job was, okay, how y'all are doing what you're doing, how can I best help, right? What can I take on? What can I do, right, to help out and make this thing, what it should be, right? So we can get into it later, but that's
Yeah.
I
Well,
kind of was. Yeah.
no, one of the things that you did, Fred just had in his hand right there.
There
You
you go.
know, you took over. We weren't coming at this from like a company standpoint, so we didn't have. It's not like, oh, we have our marketing department or something. So, Matt, you ended up really taking the reins of trying to get as much sponsorship as we could.
Tried,
Liquid
man.
Death sponsored the wrestling showcase. That was one of our sponsors, and yeah, you were 100% responsible for that. Like Fred talked about before, we knew how much fun it was. We had reminisced about all the good times of working together, and we had this idea of like, a lot of the times you'll have now in you guys in your early 40s, me still just a young kid in my 30s, but for a few more months, but you can look at a lot of aspects of your life when you're in your 30s and 40s and look back at things you did as a teenager and in your 20s. And a lot of the time you'll go, oh my God, if I could do that again with my brain today, how different would it be? Right. And I think that so much of that for me and Fred, it was almost like it was never it was really just a matter of, are you guys going to agree to do this with us? It was never a matter of, do we want you to do this with us? Because that was from the beginning, of course, we want to do this with you. Like that was in our minds. Like that was the wrestling show. Like before we even had to name the wrestling showcase, it was, we're going to do an event. And obviously we're going to do this with Matt and Calvin as well. It was just a matter of figuring out what's everybody going to do.
Well, it's like there was a line and Matt and Calvin were always on the good side of the line, but I think Josh and I went back and forth a lot about the TWF. And if we're going to get to this, we're going to get to the dance and we're going to do this production the way we always dreamed of doing, with the top tier talent on the indies and everything right. We want to pay respect to where we came from, and we want to feel the TWF spirit there. But there are certain aspects of the TWF that we did not want. So we had to but working with Matt and Calvin was always a no.
Now, I will say that team-wise, right? Team dynamics, like we have a pretty good team of diverse individuals, right? So we both have different personalities, and we all have like different backgrounds, which really helps, especially in the beginning with the creative process. It's kind of like you kind of don't want to focus on too much of the boundaries. You kind of just want to throw all the ideas out there and see what sticks, right?
Yeah,
and
we need to talk about some of those ideas, what they were.
Matt, you came up with some far out ideas,
dude. Hey, look, yo, you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
That was brilliant. Like but that's the part of the creative process. With you just kind of throw it all out there without any restrictions, and you'll find the gems in there. And personality wise, like I know that if anyone has ever done a DISC assessment, I am considered an owl, which is they do birds now. Instead, they used to do like colors, but I'm a bird. They do birds now, and the owls are like people that are really detailed oriented, that focus on those kinds of tasks and are looking at the end goal and what's needed to get to that end goal and all the details in between. So I knew that
needed that.
Yeah, which became, honestly, that was a really valuable part. We would end up having these meetings specific meetings that Calvin was running, where it would be, we'd have our creative meetings, but then we would have the other side of it where Calvin would kind of be like, we would get together, we'd say, okay, here's where we are now. And then Calvin would go, okay, well, we need to do this and we need to do this. And has anyone checked on this? And really kind of kept, because a lot of, for me being more of a creative mind, that's not to say any of you guys aren't as creative, but for me to be, that's my strength. My strength is not always that kind of linear organization, that granular, as our friend Jeff Jarrett would say, view of it. So it's helpful.
When you do a production of that scale, and it's something we'd experienced before with TWF, but when you do that, there are going to be things like, I'm going to give you an example that like, so from our perspective, we're focusing on the wrestlers, we're focusing on the ring. You have to make sure that actually shows up on time. We're focused on
put together properly.
We're focusing on obviously the venue and everything that we need to make the show what you perceive. But you wouldn't think of having markers for the board in the back, the dry erase board to write out the card. You wouldn't think about having paper clips and things to bind papers together. These are the things that Calvin got us on an itinerary of what we needed and who's doing what and all that would have just the stuff that really makes it run.
And you don't. I mean, literally down to, so we had a whiteboard in the back that had the electrical tape going along to create the lines and everything like that. So I remember, okay, we need a whiteboard. And Calvin remembered, but we also need the tape and we also need the markers. Like that's, it was, and that's where the team really, really meshed and went and worked well together. And then, we had the idea of, I think very early on, we needed to say, looking back in the TWF, one of our favorite things we ever did was Beyond the Grave because of the more theatrical aspect of it, the set looking a certain way. We looked at it, and in the beginning, we priced out the LED board.
So remember,
sweet mother of Jesus.
And it was
we've talked about this. That has changed in the business is that a lot of what we truly, at least in our territory, we truly pioneered on the indie scene because we know that the wrestlers who worked for us had never seen anything like it anywhere else they worked. The entrance stage and the projector showing the videos and all that. Everybody can do that kind of thing now. The lights, all that's there, and the LED screens at a certain level of production. If they have enough of a budget, they're all doing the LED screens and all that. And it's expensive and it looks great, but it looks generic in my opinion. And I think that's a lot of what we started coming up against. Matt actually priced out a lot of things, and we were looking at it and going, okay, well, we have a budget. We can make this work, but do we need to make it work?
Right.
Or can we go back to the days of Beyond the Grave and theme this thing in a way that's not going to feel like everything else out there?
Right. The idea was, can we scrap the big screen, the Tron that everybody's familiar with, and replace it with a level of creativity? And it was something that we also pulled from something that I think we've all kind of had an issue with WWE, for instance, is we loved, and I think most fans felt this way, back in the day, the original sets for each pay-per-view, it made it feel so special. And now, while it's incredible from a technological standpoint and visually so impressive, but creatively in a way, you're missing something. The fact that it is the same set, just with different screens. Incredible that they can do that, take the exact same physical thing and make it look entirely different with different lights and screens. But we were like, okay, what if we get rid of the screen entirely? We then said we can't get rid of it entirely because we looked back and we said, what are one of our strengths? One of the strengths is the video editing, and entrance videos was always something that we had that made us stand out. And there was also a side of it where I was like, I kind of want to make them. And I was at the same time asked to make entrance videos for Ric Flair's last match. I made the entrance videos for Jeff Jarrett. I made the entrance video for Ric Flair. I did all of the lower third graphics and everything. I did entrance videos for a few others. Calvin knows, he was in the hotel room with me. I was doing entrance videos the night before and, getting all that stuff done.
So-and-so is showing up and coming down.
Oh my God. I'm getting text messages. This one would like this music, and can we change this? I think it was like a half hour before or something. It was like, we need a 4 Horsemen entrance video. I'm like, that doesn't exist, so let's make one. But in the process of working on something which I think, inarguably the biggest entrance video, aside from Sassy Mike Malassie that I which actually Fred made, that I was ever a part of, was Ric Flair's entrance video for Ric Flair's last match. So in the process of of pouring every bit of creativity that I had into that, trying to make it as perfect as I possibly could, that reignited this fire in me, this love for creating those entrance videos with listening to the music, learning about the character and saying, how can I bring that to life? And I, at that point, was kind of like, all right, we need some sort of screen because I want to make these videos. That almost became the hobby side of this. But I also really felt like it was going to be something that was going to help us to stand out. And I think it did. I think it absolutely did.
Tatanka for a second.
Speaking there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little down the line, I guess, of how we get to Tatanka, but I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think so Calvin pointed out some. Yeah, so Calvin pointed out some stuff here. So, like, all right, I've worked at places in the past where they've had the mindset, as far as, legally speaking with music, of we'll roll the dice, right? That was not something, that's great for these other companies. That was not something that the four of us wanted to do. And it's not how Calvin operates. And so we looked at it and, Calvin, recording engineer, yes. So we looked at it and said, when we booked Tatanka, and he goes, yeah, and you can just use my WWF theme. We're like, okay. And this day and age, you have to understand guys like Cardona and Taya Valkyrie and Chelsea Green and Jacob Fatu and Josh Alexander, all these guys, they have Moose, they have their own themes that are theirs, that they own, that they bring from promotion to promotion with them. So we were like, okay, great. They're giving us the right to use this. But then you've got Tatanka. Now, the problem with Tatanka is this isn't a guy who had like generic rock music. This is a guy who had if you were a fan of Tatanka back in the day, very, very recognizable music that if you didn't hear that chant in the beginning, and if you didn't hear the music, kick in a certain way, it ruined that feeling, because that was the feeling that you had, the anticipation of that. And so we got to thinking, and our first thought, for fans of previous Talking with Friends episodes, our first thought was, well, we got to go to Biz, right? We got to go to our friend Biz, who made Hayden and Cage's theme, and made great stuff for the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack.
Talk about copy infringement.
Yeah. Made Matt Mangol's theme, maybe. But in all seriousness, we looked at it and we said, okay, what can we do? We started pricing out different people who had making wrestling themes, stuff like that. And then Fred was kind of like, I think I could give it a go. So Fred, you want to tell us about the process?
Yeah. I was very, very excited to have Tatanka with us. I'm a big Tatanka fan. And so I thought like it was kind of an honor to get to work on that. And I had just been like toying around. I'm always just messing with stuff on my computer and like different apps and things. So I have Logic Pro on my Mac, and I'd always been itching for an excuse to like do something with it. So basically just hooked up my keyboard and piano and just played in. I listened to the WWF song. I played it until I got it to sound pretty similar. And then I started messing with it and basically made a WCW-ized version of
much better.
Yeah,
there was an interlude.
I was just so I at first it was just sort of it was similar, but just the melody was different. It was recognizable, but it was different. And then I slowed the tempo a little bit because
right?
What?
You stayed in the same scale, but you just changed the notes, right?
I did the same key. Yeah. I just messed around with the flow of it, and then I slowed it down a little bit because I figured it goes better with him being older. And then but I really wanted to, because it had to do with that we were playing up the point of him being there was to represent the legend who it's the story of to show that he's still got it. He's being called out by these younger guys, and like, can he compete? And he's clearly, no one thinks he's got a chance, but he wants to show that he can still do it. So I wanted to play up the idea of him, this sort of legend persona. So I created this whole interlude that was these flutes playing and this whole kind of
that was the prelude. That would be the prelude. Right?
Well, there's flutes in the interlude too.
Okay, all right. But if I can interrupt for a second, one thing was because you have always felt very strongly when it comes to wrestling posters for indie wrestling events. You have which I happen to agree with completely, and I think we all do. But you, Fred, in particular, have always had a very strong opinion, and I think that which is that you hate when it's 1993 Tatanka on a poster and he's appearing in 2022, because what it does is that guy can't show up by no fault of his own, by the fault of only Father Time. That man can't. Yeah, and everybody does the job the Father Time. So it was like, we don't want to tell you, hey guys, let's have the the nostalgia act of Tatanka. It was really important to you.
I understand how indie wrestling works, and I understand that people have to pay their bills and they keep wrestling and all. But for what we were trying to accomplish, if there was going to be a legend on the card, he was going to be there to tell that story. He was not just a washed up has-been looking for a payday. That's not what we wanted from Tatanka, and it's not what we got. And so, yeah, it was very important to me that it's okay that he's older, because that's the story we're telling. We're not trying to pretend that this is the Tatanka from back in the day. So it was everything catered to that, creating this kind of like respect for him of what he's accomplished and who he is.
And we're going to take a quick moment to watch the entrance video and listen to the music right now.
We have an answer, apparently. Cardona's ready.
Pembroke, North Carolina, weighing in this evening at 250 pounds, Tatanka!
A legend in every sense of the word, a descendant of the Lumpy tribe, Tatanka began his legendary career as one of the most impressive undefeated streaks in history, and he's here in the Wrestling Showcase.
I gotta tell you, listen, I mean, Matt Cardona, he's not in any trouble. He's trained for this. He's planned for this.
Stumbling a little bit.
Look, I'm worried about his bicep at this point. Okay, Tatanka, I haven't seen him in a while, and I wasn't expecting him to come out in the shape that he's in.
Well, I have to ask. I mean, if you are close with Matt Cardona, did you speak with him regarding his bicep?
So yeah, I mean, it was incredible. It was a lot of fun. That process of it, that part of it. We talked about there was the business end of it. There was also the fact that of when we were going to run. So we knew very early on that we wanted two people to be a part of this from the very beginning. We wanted Matt Cardona and we wanted Killer Kross. And the thought process was Cardona is the guy to create the hype around this event on social media, and Killer Kross, I remember saying, is going to find his way back to one of the major promotions sooner than later. We should have him in this.
And yeah, I'll go even further back than that, because I'll make the point that where we ended up with Matt Cardona, we took a winding route, but we got where we were going.
Yeah.
But back to when we thought we were going to do the Last Man Standing tournament, and the concept for the Final Four was supposed to be represented by Matt Cardona, Killer Kross, a legend to be named later, and a tag team wrestler to be named later.
Yeah.
So even from that early stage, we knew who we wanted in there.
Yeah. And there was a lot of debate over who we wanted to have, go over. And there was a lot, but I think at the end of the day, the idea of Matt Cardona winning was just always for what he's been doing. And it's nice to be able to tell the story. You guys hopefully just watched the wrestling showcase so we can kind of jump around because you know he won. But the idea behind that was there's nobody else in this business, who I think is working as much as Matt Cardona all over the place. There's nobody who's going to make that championship matter going from place to place. And that was something going back to the belt itself. We wanted whoever won that championship to carry it with them for the next year until the next wrestling showcase event. We wanted them to have it wherever they were. Now, Cardona, there have only been a few places he's not able to have it. Obviously, Impact Wrestling. Certain places where it's just, hey, that's an outside championship that's not part of our world. And I totally understand that. But, he has brought that everywhere. He brought it to the UK. He's brought it all around the country. And it's awesome to see that he has that, because that brings a legitimacy to that championship and to that tournament. It doesn't, whoever goes in the future for a future event, why do you want to be the Wrestling Showcase champion? Well, I want to carry that belt that Matt Cardona carried around that everybody has seen for an entire year. I want to have that. I want to be able to go around and say, hey, remember Cardona had this last year? I'm the one who has it this year. And we wanted the Wrestling Showcase to be that. We wanted that belt to be prestigious looking. We wanted it to have that appearance that maybe is lacking in championship belts today. There's obviously some strong inspirations from the Winged Eagle and the Big Gold involved in there.
That was my mashup in the WWE 2K game. Was
and
combination
then
the Big Gold and the Eagle.
We took those original kind of drawings and compilations that we had there, those composites, and sent them over to Andrew at Wildcat Belts. And then he took that as inspiration to create something completely unique, as he put it. I love the Winged Eagle. We're going to do a different one so we don't get sued. That was kind of the, but jumping around a little bit, we talked about responsibilities. We all kind of worked together to figure out who to book. And that was something that was challenging, to book something so far out. A lot of things changed. And most notably, Killer Cross and Scarlett, and Tony Nese, who was originally, he may have been one of the first ones, if not the first one announced to be a part of the tournament. He was not under AEW contract when he accepted that. And fast forward to a couple weeks before the show, and he's under AEW contract. It's the night before All Out, and it just was not looking like a good opportunity to have him be a part of it. And so we kind of pivoted from that and got incredibly lucky and ended up having Josh Alexander and Moose take the place of both of those guys. But do you want to, at this point, should we jump into kind of the tail of that, the Killer Cross?
I think so. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there.
So Killer Cross, the plan was Killer Cross and Matt Cardona at the end. Fred had mentioned it was going to be Cross and Cardona and two other people. Once we scrapped the last man standing idea, we knew it was going to be Cross and Cardona at the end. Didn't know who was going to go over. Didn't know how that was going to play out, because there were different ways that it could go.
It was value to both guys. We really
absolutely
in that sense.
So before we get to the Killer Cross thing, we're out in Las Vegas, and I'm over at a Wrestling Revolver show, and that was right before a GCW show. And Cardona's wrestling on the show. We did a little promo together and everything like that. I did my intro for the GCW thing, and I went back to the hotel. And then I see online Matt Cardona thinks he tore his bicep. So, of course, I text him because it's Cardona. So I'm just like, gave him the old, is this a shoot, brother? And we talked a little bit, and it was obviously very apparent that this was real. And he was kind of from the beginning like, I'll be back in time. I'll be back. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay.
He's
and
like,
then
that's my goal to like, I'll be back for that.
Yeah. And it was like, he made that, and he was telling me behind the scenes, off the record, he's telling me like, I don't care. I'm coming back. But at the same time, I'm looking at it going, there is no, from a human being to a human being, I am not comfortable with saying, oh, your arm's about 70%. Come on back and wrestle 3 matches, So we had to get creative, but at the same time, we didn't know if he'd actually be able to do anything, because as much as this tournament meant to us, it was never going to be worth risking somebody's livelihood to have him be a part of it. Thankfully, the logical idea was that, especially since he was a heel, that he made the announcement at a live Major Wrestling Figure podcast event, which is available exclusively now on Premier Streaming Network. Go now and check that out on Premier Plus. But Cardona, I should also say this Saturday, don't miss Major Wrestling Figure Podcast Live 15, streaming live on Premier. Anyway, so we said Cardona's going to announce that if he's not ready, that it is in his contract that Brian Myers is allowed to take his place. If he is injured, Brian Myers can take his place. And that was something that we leaned on for the actual tournament itself, that little stipulation that was in there. So Cardona's kind of out, and we're like, well, crap. Okay, this sucks.
Another member of his crew also had back surgery.
Swoggle. So Dylan Swoggle Postel, who Fred had animated but had never met. But Swoggle was booked to be a part of it as well, and then he had to have back surgery. We had a great thing that I wish could have been a reality. He was going to come out from under the ring dressed as Tatanka to distract Tatanka. It was a great plan.
It's a true shame
that never got to, I don't think even got pitched to Dylan. So, but that was the idea for that. And so that didn't end up happening, but it was, it was important that we continue to figure out a way to have that, that major pod influence, those guys. And Brian Myers, on Impact Wrestling, Brian and Matt had been doing the major players thing together. They were together on air as heels. Brian was the Impact digital media champion at the time. So that worked out, really well. Now we've got Impact Wrestling digital media champion. But yeah, so we're down, we're figuring this out, and we're going, okay, we're going to make this work. And then I'm on my way down. We just finished up StarCast. Did I fly home from Nashville? No, we drove home from Nashville.
I talked to Killer Cross at StarCast.
Yeah, we filmed Killer Cross backstage after his match at Ric Flair's last match. We filmed him talking about, I guess it was, who was he supposed to face? Was it, no.
Nese.
Tony Nese, yeah. We had him that he was going to, he was talking about how he's coming to the wrestling showcase and all that stuff.
Cross was doing a lot of press for us. He was on a lot. And Scarlett were on a few different shows.
Doing an amazing job. And so Killer Cross, he was, we're like, okay, well, hey, we got Cross, and Cross is winning because Cardona's out, and Cross is going to have to win this whole thing, and that's great. And he's, couldn't think of a better guy to put that belt on for him to carry it, and we're like, he's gonna go back. What's that?
At that same time, Triple H comes back to WWE, and we said he's going to take him back eventually.
Yep.
And won't it be awesome when we get to say the Wrestling Showcase champion has now gone back to WWE?
Yeah. Win the Wrestling Showcase championship, and boom, right back
Almost.
to WWE.
So
Well,
so this inadvertently Vince McMahon screwed us.
Yeah, he did. Son of a bitch.
Vince McMahon, yeah. Vince
He screwed
McMahon
himself and he screwed us.
No, since the NWO showed up in 2002.
Vince McMahon has been screwing us. All right. The
man.
return of the NWO at No Way Out 2002, which happened on the exact same day as we had already booked Back from Beyond, the TWF show, our return of the TWF, right? Then he does this, which we'll tell the story in a minute of how we lose Killer Cross. And now I will tell you today, as we're recording this, the press release just went out of the release of the information on Premiere Week. Just went out today on January 5th. That January 15th, 10 days from now, is when Premiere Week kicks off. Great press, great response, really excited. Everyone's excited. And then the Wall Street Journal drops that Vince McMahon is planning to come back to the WWE, and the news cycle churns again very quickly. We couldn't even get 24 hours. So we're like, yeah, so Mr. McMahon, stop. Stop a lot. But anyway, so Killer Cross, we see him there. Calvin talked to him at StarCast. We talked to him at Ric Flair's last match. And it's after we'd driven back from Nashville, and I'm exhausted. I'm like, you know what? Like, I can't wait. I've got a family trip planned to go to Florida, visit Fred and his family, and everybody else. I'm excited to go down there. I'm burnt out from a long weekend. It was an amazing. Wednesday? What's that?
Wednesday or Thursday?
Friday. So when we got back?
Yeah.
We got back on a
Tuesday or something.
Tuesday, I want to say. Or I think we left maybe Monday, so like late, early morning Tuesday. And then about 2 days later, I hit the road to drive to Florida. I hit the road on a Thursday. Because Friday we went over a few nights because I was exhausted, so I wouldn't have to drive too much. And Friday, I am walking into the hotel for the night, and I get a text message. I want to say it was from our PR guy Derek.
Might be.
Who did an amazing job with the showcase. And it was just a link to a tweet about Killer Cross showing up on SmackDown. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And I think I then forwarded that along to you guys in the group chat, and we're like, all right, what does it mean? And I shot a text to Cross,
Who was still at the arena for SmackDown.
Who was still at the arena. I shot him a message. I said, first and foremost, congratulations to you and Scarlett. This is awesome. Really excited for you guys. I guess we should probably talk. It's kind of my, and I got a message back from him, a text saying, I'm at the arena. I can call you after whatever. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm in a hotel room with my kids and all, and my wife, and they're all sleeping, So then he actually left me a voice message saying, okay, we'll find a time to talk, but I want to give you a brief understanding or whatever. And I'm not going to go into the whole detail. He and I ended up talking for a little over an hour a couple days later. And what I will say is he could not have been more professional about that, more apologetic, where I kept saying, dude, don't apologize. This is your career. This is a one-night event for us that, again, we take very seriously. But this is your career. We are so happy for you. But he was just,
And any of us, if we got the call from WWE, would have screwed over the rest.
Would have left the dude. I left TWF to go to OVW. So, and I was the champion. So, but no, we completely understood. But at the same time, that put us in a really rough spot with the event. And thankfully, we had I want to say Moose had already kind of reached out at one point of just, but we were all booked up, and he was kind of like, hey, listen, I'm around if you want me. And so we went back and we're like, yeah, we would love to have you. And then I want to say I asked maybe Cardona for Josh Alexander's number because we're trying to think. And we ended up, at the end of the day, our show, including the pre-show, featured a title defense of the NWA national title, right? Was it the national title? Yeah. The NWA national title, I believe. Yes. I don't know why I'm second guessing that. So defense, the NWA national title, had a defense of the MLW Women's Featherweight Championship, had a appearance by the Impact Wrestling World Champion involved in our tournament, had the Impact Wrestling Digital Media Champion, Brian Myers. It just ended up being, the star-studded event that we wanted it to be.
It was great because that was always the intention, was to be not a competing promotion, but something that represents all promotions.
Yeah.
And just celebrates professional wrestling and independent wrestling to an extent. And
I will say, look, somebody who runs a company on the other network that ran later that night was very nervous when they found out that we were booking Cardona in the beginning, and was very nervous that we were screwing over their big event that they hadn't announced yet. So that's why we ran earlier in the day. But look, I mean, our goal was to always work with everybody. We
wanted to have a good time. We wanted everybody there to have a good time. The fans, we wanted the wrestlers to have a good time. And I think that was the funny thing, jumping around a little bit, but I think when the initial press came out, which really got a great reception early on, the teasers and things that were coming out, maybe a few too many months in advance, but we had good hype. And I think that there were a lot of people who thought that Conrad and Jeff, everyone always thinks they're putting together a promotion for whatever reason. And I think there was a feeling that that's what this was, because they wouldn't know who was involved with it. And, but by and large, throughout most of the planning and through the actual event, I think there were a lot of questions. Josh and I addressed this, I think, at the press conference. What does this all mean? No one could really accept that the wrestling showcase exists to be the wrestling showcase. It was like this has got to be kicking off a promotion, right? Or there's got to be something. And that was never the idea, to compete. We did not want to bring back the TWF under a new name. We were not trying to go and be yet another competitor in the wrestling business.
No, we wanted to stand out. And the original, idea in a lot of ways was we wanted to be an event, almost a representation of the network that we were airing it on. And that was part of me coming at it in my job at that time. And
I forgot to talk about Johnny Showcase's injury also.
Oh God. Yeah. Johnny Showcase, John Morrison, John Hannigan, whatever, Johnny Impact, whatever you want to call him, was wrestling and had like a severe tear. I don't know if it was his groin or it was his abdominal or whatever it was. And so we didn't know if he was going to work.
It was definitely not that we're making light of it at all, but I think there's, we were worried at a point. I don't remember specifically if John Morrison was the last straw or whatever, but there got to be a point where we were questioning, is this thing snake bit? Is always expect things are going to go wrong, just hiccups the day of, whatever. But this was a lot of things going wrong.
We had 8 people in that tournament initially. Cardona got injured. That's 1. Morrison got injured. That's 2. Nice got pulled. That's 3. I shouldn't say got pulled. Nice wasn't able to do it because of his new contract. So he got pulled. That's 3. Killer Cross gets signed. And Scarlett, who was supposed to be wrestling women's.
And we had other potential talent, I think, on the female side that
there was another one that was supposed to, that ended up signing a deal with AEW. And again, we looked at it and we said, that's not we have no hard feelings towards AEW. It made perfect sense. This was a huge weekend for them. And, they didn't want to have their talent all over the place that weekend. We totally get that. But I mean, the tournament alone, 50% of this fully booked and written tournament was now injured or unable to appear. So it was a little nerve-wracking. Yeah, we definitely felt that it was at least 50% snake bit. But it ended up just being an incredible show.
And I will say that in case there's anybody watching who has followed us through this whole story and they think, well, 2 out of the 4 people in this this quadrant here that are wrestlers who had some classic matches. So what are you doing? And I will say that I brought this up multiple times. Sometimes in jest, sometimes not. That when we were short on wrestlers and what are we going to do in these situations, I kept saying, Josh has been wanting his last match for a long time.
Hey.
And he said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going against Mangol. I'm like, you're going to be there. Bring your gear and get in the ring.
That's fine. Worst case scenario, we had to.
Yeah, I mean, Mangol even got in the ring. I'm sure we have a clip of that. Mangol got in the ring.
Yeah, I got
it
without stretching and tried to drop a leg for the first time in 20 years.
Who did you drop it on?
Denovius.
Denovius. You dropped on Denovius, right?
What a sweetheart of a man.
He
wanted to
man.
be suplexed, but I'm like, sir, I don't.
That man fought for our country, only to come home and be hit with a sack of potatoes that was Matt Mangol's leg drop. Leg drop in 15 years.
I delivered some good ones at Urban Air this past weekend. Carrie's got video.
Okay, that's. Then I guess everything. Then I guess that
height, like back in 2002. So we got it back.
You're talking about you were doing it on a trampoline.
Oh, I jumped straight up. I didn't do a bouncing. I bounced off the diagonal.
Would you imagine he got more height on a trampoline than on a wrestling ring?
Hold on. I bounced into the diagonal gimmick that you're supposed to bounce off with your back. Took my 3 steps and dropped the leg. There's no bouncing on the trampoline.
Can you get Josh this footage so that he can air?
Oh, I will.
Oh, yeah. Please send me this footage.
From my lovely wife.
Was that it?
Oh,
sir.
Big shout out to Denovius, who was a big help at our event.
Yeah, he was tremendous.
Our staff, but I mean, yeah, he unbelievable, just nonstop. I kept just giving him a hard time. Because he was helping Comrade too. Like the man never sat down. Every time I see him, I'm just like, God, hey, take a fucking break. Like he was determined to help out.
Such a hardworking, just all around, just good dude. Just a really great guy that I would be happy to have working with us at any time, whenever.
And
your schedule. There'll be something in the future.
Sure. And I'll suplex you next time. I'll hit you with a 30-second vertical, but that's beside the point. The Josh, you know that one well.
I think the 30-second vertical nowadays is just you standing in the ring for 30 seconds before collapsing.
Well, when you're 41, that's what happens.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
You will.
I hope so.
We also tossed around the idea of doing an attraction match. So you want to talk about the whole little ping pong action gimmick and Mr. Sonny Ono and the international passports. And,
I think that this is probably a really good.
That'll be for another day
to talk about. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get into that another day because here's what, as we begin to wind down today, the first season of Talking with Friends, which of course is available now exclusively on Premiere. That first season tells you how we met, everything we did in the wrestling business leading up to the wrestling showcase. So much so that I think we're
just kayfabing the fact that we're running this whole thing. We don't want to talk about
it.
Dude,
we're like promoting. We're like, this is going to be an amazing event. We can't obviously it was us all along, Austin. So that was a Vince McMahon reference. Mangol, you seem confused by that. It was me, Austin. It was me all along. There you go.
Must be Christopher Daniels.
This man, no. But anyway, that was a reference to what film?
What
documentary? This man, no.
What?
Something about SummerSlam or something like that.
No. This man, no, was it was from, I was hoping you would know it so I didn't have to, Beyond the Mat.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about who's going to win. And,
Yeah.
and there's a
douchebag,
fan outside. He's
yeah,
like,
I'm
this
not
man
booked,
no,
Terry.
this man no. That always
I'm
stuck
not
with me.
booked, Terry.
Anyway, what? Yeah, I'm
Speaking
not
of
booked.
trampolines,
Yeah,
I'm not booked, Terry.
that's Matt Mangol. That was him at the
Dennis
trampoline.
Stamp.
That's the video you're watching. Matt Mangol with his dumbbells because you never know when his next match is.
Yeah.
No, but so I think season 2 of Talking with Friends, exclusively on Premier Streaming Network, to me, I think a great way to do it is just to tell, because we've got a lot of stories and a lot of never before seen footage that you're seeing some of it in this episode. We had a camera crew, GPW Productions, followed us around. They also did the event itself. So we've got just a ton of footage. And so we're going to be able to show you a lot of never before seen stuff, a lot of behind the scenes. You'll be able to see who was helping backstage, helping book finishes when Jeff Jarrett had to step out and do the Money for Mongo show, which was also in our ring. We'll talk about that as well. But
Kind of burying the lead here. Jeff Jarrett was producing the matches.
Oh, yeah. Jeff Jarrett was producing the matches.
Did we forget that Jeff Jarrett also signed with WWE?
Yes. So so here's the fun part.
Yes.
Jeff Jarrett was supposed to. Yes. Okay. So this is amazing. All right, we're telling this right now. Then this is the great thing to give you a little taste. So Jeff Jarrett ends up. Fred and Jeff formed a really good working relationship with each other, and through Fred attempting to do something with Conrad, Conrad was pretty much just like, listen, Jeff's my wrestling guy. You know, you guys get together and figure out.
Let me say that Jeff Jarrett is very, very cool in that he took someone who had no real experience promoting, and he just loves this business so much and wanted to give back that he's like, what? Tell me how you want me to be involved and how can I help you? And just like, very cool guy, and I really appreciate.
He really took you under his wing to the point where he literally sat next to you in Gorilla the entire night. Fred ran Gorilla for the show, and Jeff sat next to you the whole night. Yep. But a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, if you will. Jeff Jarrett gets signed by the WWE to be the senior vice president of live events. So we go, okay, what's going to happen here? And then he, meanwhile, is supposed to be wrestling. What's that?
And then WWE books their UK show.
Their UK show. WWE books the UK show at the same day at give or take the same time because of the time difference, which gave us these flashbacks to the No Way Out pay-per-view in 2002. And so
we're like, of course they're going to send Jeff Jarrett to the UK.
Right. But this is where Vince McMahon helped because Vince left, and that changed a couple of things, Triple H being back in charge. And while that took Killer Cross from us, it returned Jeff Jarrett to us. But funny thing, Jeff Jarrett was replaced by somebody else, the Road Dogg Jesse James, who inadvertently kind of stumbled into the room, like literally walked into the room and was like, yeah, like what's going on over here? And the next thing I know, I'm like talking to someone, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this kind of finish. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, did you talk with Jeff about it? And they're like, no. They're like, Road Dogg went over it with us. I'm like, what? Road Dogg's working?
I believe what happened was Jeff got confused about the timing of when the show was going to start. So he committed to do a really great thing with Money for Mongo that he and a big list of stars were in our ring, raising money for Mongo McMichael. And Jeff got really, really concerned that he was going to drop the ball, that there just wasn't going to be time for him to sit with the talent and plan out the finishes to the match. He didn't realize there was going to be time to do what he had to do. We had a pre-show and we had whatever. But so he asked Road Dogg to fill in for him in case he wasn't going to be back in time. And we ended up getting the benefit of just two extremely talented, extremely experienced people to guide these matches.
It was unbelievable luck on our part to be able to have that. And there's a video that hopefully is rolling right now while I'm saying this. I know there is video footage of Fred and myself standing in a circle with the members of the main event.
Where we truly did not belong.
We did not belong. But it's me, it's Fred, it's Cardona, it's Fatu, it's Josh Alexander, it's Road Dogg, and it's Jeff Jarrett, and I think Brian Myers was there as well. And it was one of those like pinch me moments of like, you want to talk about looking at the TWF in the past and going, I bet we could do this, but better now. Well, man, I mean, but that's it. And Fred and I are pretty much saying nothing as we are watching, which was such an amazing feeling that, the four of us created this event. And now we're pretty much flies on the wall watching Jeff Jarrett and Road Dogg work out a finish with the current Impact World Champion, former NWA World Champion, the longest reigning MLW World Champion. It was so crazy to be a part of that. We had a number of moments throughout that weekend where we were just like, this is special. And we would see the talent having that feeling too. And so many of them would come in, like Cardona, when he comes in and he's like, I'm not BSing you. Like, I seriously thought this was going to be like a ring set up in the middle and like whatever. And it was just going to be a little indie show. And he's like, I had no idea. And we haven't even gotten into the
Didn't even know it was actually going to be in the hotel.
He didn't even know it was in the hotel. He shows up. He's like, so where's, is there like a ride to the venue? I'm like, yeah, it's that hallway over there. It was, and this isn't even talking about Mike Chioda, which we're not going to get into now.
And John Morrison. John Morrison coming up to me at the cafe as I'm trying to get us some caffeine. He walks over in gear, all oiled up. Anybody who needs John Morrison? I go over. Well, everyone needs John Morrison. I said, hold on. I said, you want something? And then I walk him back to the room he was supposed to be for pictures or something. Well, it's a random. He walks up in gear in the middle of the lobby.
Every interaction Matt Mangol has ever had with anyone of note in the wrestling business has been while Mangol's getting either a drink or food. There was Scott Hall, the late great Scott Hall, asking for him to like pass something. Anything for the bad guy.
No, I let him go in front of me in the buffet line. I go, I don't want to mess with bad guy.
All of this had to do with, in fairness, a lot of this had to do with Conrad running Top Guy Weekend and the level of talent that Conrad brings with him.
Yeah.
By which I mean Dave Silva.
Yeah.
But I think there were so many moments that weekend that were just surreal for us. Again, thinking back to where we came from, and we just revisited so much of that on this show. And we're just even like going down to breakfast in the hotel, and we'd see people that we grew up watching on TV at a couple tables over, and then we go over and say hello. Like it was a really fascinating experience.
We were watching for Tatanka and his plate of 17 pancakes, but we didn't miss that.
Yeah, which available in the archives. Talking with friends on Premiere. It's even and just gives me like a good feeling with certain things. I know that as I mentioned before, the genesis of this whole thing was, in a lot of ways, it was like Fred going, okay, how can I get back into this business in some way? I know I had been there. It's what led to my doing a podcast with Bill Apter and stuff back, 4+ years ago. It was this mindset of like, I know I have something to offer. How can I offer it? And what can I offer?
Funny thing, I mean, I had obviously an array of experiences in TWF and all that, but everybody who's a wrestling fan starts out wanting to be a wrestler for the most part. If you want to get into the business, you dream you're going to be the wrestling champion and whatever. But I think it's ironic, especially for Josh and anyone else, but like considering that so much of our experience that all of us have had really dates back to just the fact that we knew Bill Apter. Mm-hmm. And Bill is an example of someone who found a way to make a career in professional wrestling when he was never going to be a professional wrestler. And I think we've all figured out in our own ways that there's ways to be in this industry and to experience that love for it, that you don't have to take a bump, you know?
But I also think the fact that all four of us on here on varying degrees, but we've all taken that bump. We've all worked matches. We've all done, and I think that has really helped with, as we've gotten back into the business, with the respect, from the boys, as they say, from the men and women in the business, because they know how much respect we have for what they're doing. And, I think that goes a long way. But one of the things I was going to say, Fred, was, knowing that this all began by your being like, man, I just want to be involved. And then I was at Blizzard Brawl in Wisconsin, and I shared a ride over to the building for Blizzard Brawl from the hotel with Moose. And when we were first talking, the first thing he says, he goes, "How's your brother doing?" And I thought to myself, how cool that is, because nobody knew you before. You had done all the stuff before, but nobody really knew you. And a whole lot of it was like, man, how can Fred find a way back into the business? And now these guys I'm bumping into are just like, hey, how's Fred doing? And that was the other thing. He didn't say, how's your brother? He said, how's Fred? And that was a big thing too, because you weren't the, hey, this is my brother. You guys know me from what I'm doing.
Moose and I had a really long, really great conversation walking through the airport in Chicago on our, we're going to be flying home, and we live in different parts of Florida. You would think that the morning flight from Chicago to Orlando would not be that far removed in the airport from the flight from Chicago to West Palm Beach, where I was going. You'd be incorrect. So I walked with Moose to his gate through the entire airport, said our farewells, and I look around and realize that I'm in the wrong terminal. I had to awkwardly walk back.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is you finally had that opportunity to pun intended, showcase your talents and what you offer the wrestling business. And in doing so, you earned the respect of your peers in the business. And it's an awesome thing. All of you did. And it's an awesome thing to have been able to see. And, the one last thing that I want to say is thinking about Bill Apter, who, by the way, if you're saying they talk about Bill all the time, why wasn't Bill a part of the wrestling showcase? We offered him a spot that we won't say in case we have an opportunity to do it down the line. But we offered it to him, and unfortunately, from a schedule standpoint, he wasn't able to do it. But Bill Apter will never not be at an event we do because we don't invite him. He will only not be there because he's,
it's too good for us.
Got 1,000,001 things to do. He's going to be busy. But I do remember Andrew Sagan's graduation party from high school. I remember talking to Bill Apter, and I remember telling him about, the training I was doing at the Wild Samoan Training Center. And I remember Bill going, yeah, I don't really see you being like a wrestler. I see you being really successful in this business, is more in the Shane McMahon kind of role, do the behind the scenes stuff. And not talking about Shane on air, but what he was doing behind the scenes in media and stuff like that. And I remember being almost a little offended of just oh, you don't think I'm good enough, And it wasn't until years later working with Bill and really learning from Bill in a lot of ways that I realized that he was right, and he saw something in me and saw what I could contribute, and was pretty much going yeah, no, I know you can wrestle. That's great. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that was the case for the four of us as well, is that we found it. Now, Fred, Fred, share with everybody what your official title is now, your actual full-time job now.
I'm the Vice President of Business Operations and Finance, which is a mouthful.
For Premier Streaming Network. And I'm the Vice President of Programming and Creative Development. So the thing is, I think we did all right.
Yeah, and that's
so
conversation, but in many ways that this network that you're watching right now exists as a result of the work that we put in for the wrestling showcase, and just the opportunities and the ideas that come. One thing leads to another, You know,
yeah. And it was never, when we started this, and even when we stopped, we didn't know that that's what was going to come from this. But we'll get to that story in a future episode. Any final thoughts before we go? Next time, you know, we'll pick up the story and talk a little bit more about, you know, some of the creative that went into this, because for the first time ever, no one's ever cared about the creative when we were talking about the TWF days, but I think everyone is going to be interested in the creative as it relates to this and a bunch of people they know and care about. So final thoughts for this episode, Fred.
I think I've said a lot. I'm excited to be back and talking about all this. It was a labor of love, and very proud of what we were able to accomplish all together. It was a phenomenally great time with my best friends, and you know, like to. It's nice to be able that we can reminisce about something that was a really positive experience. You know,
Yes,
because they weren't always. But yeah, all good.
Calvin Tan.
Yeah, I haven't been able to talk about the brilliance of you know, what went on backstage with the creative and just how everything came together with this showcase. So I'm actually really excited to share that with the world.
Yep.
We've been kind of keeping it under wraps.
Yeah, and that's a whole other episode, maybe 2 or 3. Like there's a lot there. So that's why I felt like we could talk today a little bit about the business end of how we like came up with the idea of doing this and all that. But yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun to dive into. I didn't mean to cut you off there. You can continue, Kevin.
Oh, that was it. I was done. That was it.
He's very excited and will not speak again until that episode arrives.
Yes.
Matt Mangol, final thoughts, because we haven't even talked about what you ended up doing on the show. We'll talk about that another time.
Plenty to talk about. The 111 places I called repeatedly and not harassed, but sweet talked.
Yeah.
And almost
Matt Mangol is not allowed in Schaumburg, Illinois anymore.
From a hookah lounge locally to oh man, what's that guy's name? Oh, well, good guy, I'm sure. But a bit of a worker that was segued to my cell phone from a Chicago number. And hey, buddy, hey, you got a spot? You know, for who? Who are you? You guys sent me. We're trying to sell local vendor spots. There's a story there too, man.
Oh, there's a whole story. We can have an entire episode, Matt, about
We'll get there at some point. But no, dude, it was great. And there's a lot of, like Calvin was saying, behind the scenes stuff, day of stuff.
We haven't even scratched the surface yet, and that's why we got a whole second season. Yeah,
y'all need to stick around and subscribe to Premiere. It'll be more than worth your while. That you won't believe what is it, proposed attraction matches, who we tried to get sponsorship from, who just what was supposed to happen, what happened day of, what happened minute before, what happened after,
during,
the whole thing. So stick around. It's all good. It's good to be back here on Talking with Friends.
And so thank you everybody for joining us. Don't forget, of course, subscribe to Premiere Plus. $4.99 a month. That is it. You get the entire library of CZW, of ECWA, of WrestlePro Alaska, 1PW, so much more than that. Subscribe to that. It's actually $49.99 for the year, so you can save a little bit because there's enough content to last you a couple of years. And we're excited for, but by the way, Premiere Week, which is, we still have a few more days in Premiere Week. The Wrestling Showcase is free all week. It is free. It's not behind a paywall. You don't have to buy it on pay-per-view. So go watch it. Go enjoy it right now if you haven't. If for some reason you thought, I'll learn all about what happened before I watch the thing, please go and check it out and watch it again. The pre-show's on there as well, featuring a couple of TWF alumni, and we'll talk more about that next time when we all get back together again. For Fred Shernoff, Calvin Tan, Matt Mangol, I'm Josh Shernoff, and this has been Talking with Friends. on Premier Streaming Network. We'll see you next time.
Oh.